Icarus laughed as he fell, threw his head back, and yelled into the winds. Arms spread wide, teeth bared to the world. This is only one stanza of a poem titled Rewriting Icarus, and it got popular on TikTok and Instagram back in 2022-ish. I was reminded of it a few times when rereading More Than Meets the Eye. It's a short piece, but it brings that image to mind of a delusional self-confidence. And that self-confidence all at once being shattered so thoroughly it's almost comical as reality comes crashing down. Dear viewer, I propose this to you in this video. Pharma is our Icarus. Pharma's ambition, sense of self, grandiosity, and indeed his own self-confidence was the catalyst that caused him to fall, and what a long fall it was. But let's back up just a tad. Pharma in the IDW comics is a bastard, and I love it. Maybe I have a thing for medics, because I've been noticing a trend. But anyway, Pharma is, unlike so many others, a comic book exclusive character, at least for now. He wasn't in G1, Armada, Beast Wars Prime, that cringe Netflix series. But even just within the two stories of More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light, he's an antagonist for, I'm going to say, 2 whole arcs in total. So let's count. The first is when he's the main baddie early on in the Delphi arc, so I'm giving that 1 point, and let's give him half a point each for being a minor baddie in 2 later arcs. Yeah, that's technically 3 arcs, and yeah, this also means I can't count, I was bad at math, but in a story where there are 57 issues in More Than Meets the Eye and 25 in Lost Light, he doesn't really have a whole lot of screen time. It is because of this that this video is going to be a lot of speculation and theory crafting on my part. I'll try to defend my points, but if anybody disagrees with me or how I'm viewing Pharma, feel free to let me know, I'm super interested. We first meet Pharma pretty early on in issue 4, when First Aid, another medic, gives us a quick TLDR rundown. Control freak. Thinks he's an expert on everything. Amazing doctor, though. He once performed a 4-way fuel pump transplant, and he was one of the donors. And honestly, if I was Pharma, I'd probably think the same thing. It's hammered into us that Pharma is a good, no, amazing doctor. But he's not just a doctor, but an amazing scientist in general. See First Aid's previous statement, and later on from Ratchet too. You wouldn't ask me that if you'd seen him at work. See, good medics, it's all in the hands. He made a bomb with a virus in it, and then proceeded to make an antidote for that very virus. He was even on the cusp of finding a cure to cybercorosis, a disease with then no known cure and a 100% fatality rate. A disease where someone's spark essentially just gives out. Even Ratchet struggled when dealing with patients that came down with it. Pharma is a genius, and he lives for that. He likes the knowledge that he's better than everyone else, but it is important to note that he doesn't need a validation from it. He's perfectly happy sitting in his own corner by himself fixing problems that he comes across, or any problems that he makes himself. He doesn't care for compliments because why would he? Most everyone is beneath him, so a, "Wow, Pharma, you're amazing," is hit with a, well, yeah, no shit. It's only those he considers his equal whose opinions have any weight. And the one bot we can see who can match Pharma blow for blow is Ratchet. Ratchet and Pharma are like the yin and yang of doctors, for a lack of a better phrase right now. I get a sense that Pharma is a doctor not because he wants to help people or make the universe a better place or wants to cure a certain illness, but because he likes solving puzzles. Strong House MD vibes. He wants to stretch his own creativity, wit, and insight. The fact that he ends up healing people is just a happy bonus. Ratchet, while awkward and blunt, very clearly cares for people. He is the epitome of a grizzled old man with a heart of gold, and it's something Pharma clocks, probably pretty early on. You care. All you do is care. You care about everything and everyone. It's one of your more admirable weaknesses. Pharma is the rational objective force, while Ratchet leans on the empathy and reasoning side of their job as medics. That's not to say Pharma doesn't have any good traits. We see him seemingly care about Chrome Dome back when they were at the Institute, but on the other hand, they worked at the Institute. So make of that what you will. I don't really think Pharma has ever been able to match personalities with anyone, really. We see Lockdown at one point mention how irritated he is at Pharma's everything, probably. And I don't think it's because he's the only one who has those feelings. I think Pharma's strong ego and superiority causes him to be isolated from people. Everyone is kept at a business casual relationship at best, even Ratchet. At one point, Pharma has Ratchet on the back foot, or back head, spine? The point is Pharma is in control, and in this last-ditch attempt to appeal to him, definitely made in a panic, by the way, Ratchet tells him that they can let bygones be bygones, they can talk late into the night, just like they used to in the old days. But for the life of me, I cannot actually imagine them having deep talks or any kind of heart-to-heart discussions. Ratchet isn't one to pry into people's business unless he has to, and Pharma tends to not take people's emotions into account when he's interested in something. So it would not surprise me if those late-night talks were medical in nature, whether it be about a problematic patient, an illness, or a possible tech improvement, business-like. Talks you'd have with your coworker, not your friend. It's interesting that when characters in the comic talk about Pharma in any positive light, they almost always point to how good at his job he is. He's a good doctor. They never mentioned or bring up any of his positive traits as an individual. It's never, he was a good guy or he had a lot of fun moments, just a good doctor. Maybe from everyone else, that's fine, but Ratchet is Pharma's only equal. He does want validation from him on some level, just a little bit, to the point that he becomes obsessed with it. It's why later on he ends up killing Ambulon the way he does. It wasn't because he had any real dislike of Ambulon or Ambulon pissed him off. It was to spite Ratchet, to hit him where it hurts, his medical prowess and ability to help others, to cause as much anguish as possible. All of this so far points to Pharma being a bit one-note, a borderline narcissist who doesn't really care and only wants to focus on his work or experiments. But thankfully, that's not everything Pharma has to offer, and he very much does have feelings. Besides the anger and manic episodes of elation, obviously. He's rational, but he does have empathy. Later on in the story, the crew is fighting off Tyrus, who plans his whole big bad plan of culling the Cybertronian population, getting rid of any bot who was cold constructed instead of forged. Cold constructed meaning a body was artificially made, mass-produced, and then a spark was placed inside of that body. See Getaway or Chrome Dome, for example. As opposed to forged bots who develop a body naturally. See Rodimus or Pharma. Tyrus ends up opening a portal to go through and acts as a bit of a morality lock. Only those at peace with themselves, those with no guilt or regrets or anguish inside of them, can go in and out. Pharma is very clearly locked out. So it's obvious he feels guilty about something. But what exactly it is we aren't told. It could be a number of things, but I think it probably has to do with Delphi. Way back in issue 4, when Pharma was first introduced, we are shown the Delphi medical facility. I mentioned in the Drift video that Delphi is in DJD territory, those Decepticon executioners I go into. Go watch that video, by the way. We don't know how much Pharma knew about the DJD prior to Delphi, but it wouldn't be hard to assume that he knew something. The DJD aren't exactly undercover covert ops. They don't hide any of their wreckage they leave behind. Whatever the case, eventually the DJD show up, and their leader Tarn strikes a deal with Pharma. They leave the Delphi facility alone, and in return, Pharma supplies Tarn with transformation cogs, or T-cogs for short, since his keeps burning out so quickly. A fine enough deal at first, but as the demand for T-cogs rises in shorter and shorter increments, Pharma turns to killing his own patients to meet the quota. There's a few things I end up questioning with this. When Tarn first appears, Pharma doesn't attempt to reach out for help or reinforcements. It's not like the medical team is locked down at all times. We see that Aid mentions the supply runs he went on while at Delphi. And when we do see a minor flashback, they talk like their communication systems are working. Did Pharma just not trust it? Was he wary of spies? Assumed they were being watched? And beyond that, it was Prowl who originally sent Pharma to Delphi in the first place. You're telling me, Prowl. Don't trust anyone, Prowl. Always have 6 backup plans, Prowl. Be ready for anything, Prowl. Didn't give the team at Delphi, or at the very least give Pharma, a way to contact home if anything were to happen. But maybe that's where Pharma's ego comes in. Maybe he did have an option to call for help, he just didn't see the need to. Maybe he underestimated the DJD and overestimated how much he could handle, that by the time he realized how little control of the situation he had, it was too late. By this point, the quota from Tarn was so high that it was the main thing plaguing Pharma, so he needed a way out. And when he couldn't find one, he made one himself. There are now 2 problems Pharma has to deal with. The first If he just ran away from Delphi, it was assured that the DJD would hunt him down and either kill him or make his theoretical cage even smaller. And the second, he's now been killing his own patients for at least a few months, and there's a real possibility that info gets out, which lands him at best in prison. You could argue at least he wouldn't be dead, but for someone like Pharma who thrives on creating, experimenting, pushing the boundaries of the medical field, to have that stripped away, you might as well kill him anyway. So, he builds a bomb. One that blows out all communications and releases a virus that infects anyone that it comes into contact with. The moment an infected individual activates their own TCOG, the virus in their body is released, and death is inevitable. It makes me think he may have hoped Tarn would catch it too, with how often he went through his TCOGs. Or maybe it was spite. The TCOGs are what Tarn cared about in their little transaction, so that's what Pharma was going to target. I wholeheartedly believe that he did feel guilty at some point for killing his patients, but at the end of the day, Pharma's end goal and main priority was himself. It was making sure his reputation wasn't damaged and his own freedom wasn't compromised. Even at the end of the Delphi arc, we find out that while he made a vaccine, he only made one, only for himself. Couldn't even risk telling First Aid or Ambulon, even ignoring the fact that he didn't make antidotes for them. He didn't even make extras for himself. Didn't assume anything would go wrong. Why would it? He's a genius. He's got this all under control. Obviously, that's not true, and he ends up defeated, and we think that's the last of him, but it's not. He's saved by Tyrus before joining his team, but it doesn't seem like he believes in his cause. I get the sense it's more of a, this is a path of least resistance, but gets me the best result kind of thing. Tyrus doesn't really care about him or what he does, and he mostly leaves him alone, and since he gained access to Tyrus' collection of technology, he was probably more or less content. But this is where the arguments in Pharma's favor for the situation at Delphi kind of dies. At Delphi, he had plausible reasons for doing what he did. He was under the DJD's thumb, and he cracked. But with Tyrus on Luna 1, he seems to enjoy torment just for the sake of it. He looks forward to seeing an execution, he kills Ambulon, he straight up separates Ratchet's head and his spine from his body and tortures him because of bitterness, I assume. Resentment? To get his lick back, basically. And yet, at the end, he couldn't go through that portal that Tyrus opens I mentioned back at the beginning. He is guilty. And following that feeling, he almost seems to purposefully nag on First Aid, bragging and joking about killing Ambulon to push Aid to kill him. Now, whether he essentially chooses suicide because everything was hitting him all at once, or because he's now backed into a corner and simply couldn't find a way to save himself, I haven't really decided yet. So, he's gone for good now. Psych, just kidding, he comes back one more time. Kind of. We continue reading, and it is in the Lost Light comic that we find out Pharma's body has been hijacked by Adaptus, who is, in short terms, a god. And despite that, there's some part of Pharma deep down that is still there. He pops up fighting for control occasionally, and it's this next bit I find extremely funny. He spots Ratchet on some security cameras, and that obsession he has comes flooding back immediately, so he heads down to talk to him. I don't think at this point Pharma is directly in control, but more so that he's influencing Adaptus' actions a bit. He meets the crew on the deck, and the first thing he does is turn to Drift and attempt to kill him. We don't get a clear time frame, but it's highly likely at this point that Ratchet and Drift are either in the relationship or at the very least are in the early stages of one. Now I want you to imagine you were possessed by a space god. You are fighting for control and you get just glimpses of freedom. You see your former coworker, rival, partner, obsession-y, and he has a new boyfriend, and you try to murk him on sight. That is extraordinarily funny. Unfortunately for both Adaptus and Pharma, they don't last very long. They end up getting a double kill, or triple kill, technically, when Tyrus and Adaptus get into a fight and they take each other out. Pharma built his own perfect tower of cards, but that tower was built on pride, arrogance, self-confidence, and ego, so when the perfect gusts of wind named Tarn and Ratchet came along, it was all too easy for it to fall. And I think he was always going to fall, but the manner of how far and how soon were tied to his own decisions. Now, it is entirely possible you can go back and read Pharma as a doctor at the height of his career who got into the wrong crowd, was overwhelmed, and got backed into a corner. When an animal is backed into a corner, they lash out. And maybe that's what he was doing. But honestly, I find that a bit boring. I think it erases some of the complexity of Pharma. Yeah, he's got this bucket of negative traits, but at the end of the day, he was still a good doctor. He was an Autobot that was needed during the war. I think if certain decisions had or had not been made before the war, he and Ratchet would probably be closer than they were. Eventually, reality came crashing down, and our Autobot lost his wings.